Hey guys, it's Chernosky from the Team Center team, and Carrillo is here, who just moderated an amazing mastery chat. Thank you so much for doing such an awesome job, and I loved the topic, which was student-centered learning. So, Marcia, how are you feeling right now?
I can barely breathe, and it's the fastest hour of my life.
Yeah, no, I think you did a fantastic job. I think it was an amazing chat, and I personally loved seeing some of the responses that people had, because I really feel like, student-centered learning is such an important shift in education. It's such an important shift as things like personalization and individualization kind of start to be the norm. It's really those student-centered environments that will allow those things to happen. So what was a highlight from the chat that you remember or that you enjoyed most from tonight?
Actually, I had originally predicted that I was interested in seeing the resources, and of course, I haven't had a
Yeah,
chance to click through them all because that was
sure.
my last question. But the question where we talk about the resistance, I was really interested to see, or why should we go to student-centered learning? So
Right.
those ended up being some of my favorite questions and all of the answers because I like to see the diversity.
Right.
I like it. So it kind of taught me about asking questions. You want to leave it open enough that it's not prescribed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I loved that you formatted your questions that way. I think it got a lot of people talking. Was there anything that was either like surprising or that really pumped you up, or maybe even really disappointing, like from the responses that you got? I'm just kind of curious, because
I,
you have a
you
lot of experience working with teachers. So I'm just kind of interested in your take on that.
so far, I was just really surprised actually that it seemed like everybody was on board with student-centered learning, that most of the
Yeah,
people in the chat, they're using it or they know about it.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
one thing, and I wasn't surprised about it because I actually have this tweet pinned, the visible learning research by John Hattie. That's
Yes.
actually my pinned tweet with
I actually saw that before the chat. I was looking at it.
yes.
Yeah.
And so if we click there and we look at student-centered learning, and a couple people addressed it, and I liked that. I think I retweeted that because, we do want that. Well, what if I teach this subject? Or what
Yeah.
about trying to teach this? Are you sure that's going to work? So I think
Right.
it's how I responded to the John Hattie research question was, I think, looking at all the high yield strategies and making sure that we do all those things.
I actually personally loved that tweet that you had as a response. I love John Hattie's research. I think it's a really powerful tool for educators, as I'm sure you do, posting it like just before the chat. I literally saw that. And I had a similar response to that question, right? So the question was, hey, student-centered learning doesn't have the highest impact, right? Like a 0.4 on John Hattie's scale is essentially a normal year of growth, right? So anything more than that is increasing learning. Anything less than that is less than a year's worth of growth. So I can't remember who it was. Please forgive me, whoever you are, but they said, hey, student-centered learning on that visual scale is not the highest yield. But I think you hit the nail on the head when that scale is not to be used and say you should only do these practices on islands, right, by themselves. So I love the fact that you brought in the fact that they come together. Another point that I made in response to that same tweet was that, without a student-centered environment, a lot of those other impact or high impact practices can't necessarily happen, right? So if you don't. I think I went off here. Sorry.
Are we here? Okay.
Yeah, we're still good. I think I was just having a technical glitch, but I think there are some things that, you know, when a student-centered environment exists, these other higher impact things become more natural or organic. Would you agree with that, you think?
I would agree with that. One of the main ones is feedback. So in a student-centered environment,
Right.
I can get around to every kid. I can interact with every student more often than I would with a whole period of lecture.
Yeah.
And just the interaction, I also, kind of piggybacked on that with um, what about our at-risk students, or even
Right.
very advanced students who are like, this is dumb. I can read the chapter and I can ace the
Yeah.
test. Like, how
Yeah.
do we motivate them? And what I've seen in the classroom through many observations and just the model teaching or co-teaching lessons myself is that I got kids to lift their heads off the desk
Yeah.
in a special day class because I brought in 3 green screens and a bunch of iPads, and I said, we're doing green screen today. And
Yeah.
I went around, I didn't even know these kids. And they are finding me at school now saying, come
Yeah.
do that green screen again. And the
Yeah.
teacher said she'd never had, I mean, these kids, when I came in, some of them had their heads on the table. And one guy even told me, I'm not going to do that. I said, okay. He did it by the end of the day. He took like 4
That's
pictures.
awesome. Well, and I love that because it speaks to the building of that culture and the building of that environment, right? So the first time you do that awesome activity with the students, with the green screens and the iPads, it's probably a little bit taboo. It's a little bit new to them. It's a little bit exciting, right? But once you get them hooked with those types of experiences, you can now more organically now embed that same amazing experience multiple times over. So you can build this amazing environment. So that's a fantastic. You're speaking my language tonight, Marcia.
All
You really
right.
are. You're you're preaching. You're preaching for me. I love that. I absolutely love that. Like here, Jeff Kaplan says he's one of our teachers that also uses the grid method down in Georgia, and I hear this from teachers all the time. Is because the grid method is a self-paced mastery framework, it basically creates a student-centered learning environment organically, right?
Right.
And I had a teacher email me just this past week, and they said, I went back to my traditional style that's not student-centered for like 1 unit because I had to get through it before spring break. And they said they hated it. They couldn't stand it. They were depressed. The kids were depressed. Everyone was depressed. And it was like this huge shift that had occurred. Like they were like, I'm never going back. I'm never going back to this traditional like teacher-centered model, right? So what's the most common thing? Let me see if I can get some final thoughts from you.
Okay.
If you could tell everyone and try to get everyone on board with the student-centered learning train, right?
Yes.
What would you tell them? Like if you had, all these people, this is going to be going out to, Facebook and seen hundreds of times, if not thousands. Like, what do you want to tell them about student-centered learning that they might not already know, or that could potentially make them take the risk and see the value?
Student-centered learning. Do you want students to want to come to your class? Do you want students to go home and edit a video, but it wasn't even homework? They come back and they're so proud to show you, this is what I did. Look what I made. Look what I made. That right there would motivate me in itself. And I think we start with these relevant things like green screen and fun, different activities. And it's easy to move it into the content. Students want to learn. They want to be able to be creative. They want to be curious. And I think the student-centered environment really helps some of our at-risk students. And I'm in a district where we have 80% high poverty. We have foster youth, EL, special ed. And you know what? This makes learning good for all. When you're thinking about designing a lesson for all students, it's the student-centered learning environment nurtures that. And it allows for the relevance and real world. So it brings things together, and it actually makes teaching easier. You're going to, I think, last in the profession longer and be more invigorated yourself.
Yes. Oh man. I just want to like wrap that up and package it and then share it with every teacher I work with. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you for those amazing words.
Thank you, Chad.
And I truly love the fact that you said it helps you enjoy teaching, right? When you're the center, when you do this traditional like teacher centered model of instruction, right? It's all on you. It's more stressful. You're trying to keep everyone quiet and manage them. But I tell teachers all the time, and I agree with you 1000%, that when we create student centered learning environments, we can truly engage students and make them active in the learning process, which means they're not going to be management issues, right? Like they're not going to be an issue. They're going to be less stressed for you. And you're going to enjoy what you do because you get to do what every teacher wants to do, and that's help grow your students and get them what they need when they need it. And that can't happen if you're trying to do the same thing with 30 kids at the exact same time because you think that you need to give them information when they can look it up on their phone, right? So we need to give them these experiences. So you are fantastic. You're like my favorite person of the week right now.
Oh, well, thank you.
Let's definitely keep connecting if we can support you in any
Go
way.
Dodgers. Go Dodgers.
Go Dodgers.
Shout out. We did win today. There was lots of home runs.
All right. Fantastic. Well, you have a great night, Marcia, and thank you so much for doing such a great job on Mastery Chat.
Thank you, Mastery Chat. Epic.
Yeah.